Prime Minister Trudeau, it's pretty much just time to shut off the lights, show's over, shut down the Liberal Party. You're not going to be able to come back from polling deficits this bad. Not only was the Durham by-election result deeply embarrassing for the Liberals, now polling that just came out this morning is showing that the Conservatives have a lead of 20 points on the Liberal Party. Yes, 20. That 2-0, no decimal point between the 2 and the 0, a 20-point lead over the Liberals. And what's truly embarrassing is that the NDP are not really benefiting that much from the 10% collapse of the Liberals since the last election. Really, it's the Conservatives who are just gaining votes from everyone, from the Greens, from the Bloc, from the Liberals, from the PPC. Everyone's just voting for the Conservatives. And yes, guys, the PPC is not a party anymore. They get 1% in this poll. A lot of polls are only showing them at 1%. They just don't fill a void anymore. But getting back to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, the pain does not stop there. We have this other poll showing that people's top issues, and I've never really liked the way that Nanos does the top issues because I believe they let you pick 2 or 3 issues. I think that voters should just be asked to pick one issue that they care about. Once you start asking people to pick 3 issues, people start picking things because it feels very socially conscious to do, even though it's not something they really voted for. What this is showing me is that, yes, it makes sense that jobs, economy, inflation, and housing are so high up there in terms of people's top issues, but the real telling thing is the 7% that environment got. Why that is telling is I remember not long ago, and I'm just thinking like a month and a half, 2-3 months ago, environment in the Nanos polls used to poll at 12, 13%. The fact that it's almost only half as much as it used to be is showing that people aren't even going to pretend that they care about environmental issues going into the 25 election. The Liberals rely on a lot of very left-wing, socially progressive voters showing up to vote for ancillary sort of issues in order to beef up their base of support and turn out the vote. The Liberal Party's left-wing activists tend to be their most active voters, and now this poll is showing that a lot of people are actually kind of waking up, smelling the coffee, and realizing that they can't live life focusing on abstract environmental issues, and eventually the rent needs to be paid. And that is the biggest issue for the Liberals. As much as I am a very socially conservative person, I'm also a fiscal conservative, and I understand that fundamentally 80% of voters mostly care about pocketbook issues. And when you combine all of the issues on this poll on stuff that really just ends up being the economy and cost of living, it's more than like 50% of people basically saying, I'm just going to vote for whoever is going to slow down inflation, cut my taxes, and all that other good stuff. And the Liberals and the NDP are frankly just too arrogant to listen to Canadians and adjust their economic plans. If the Liberals just said, we were pushing the carbon tax earlier to try and, fight climate change or whatever, even though it doesn't, they could say, well, but Canadians are hurting so much right now, so we're going to put a 3-year pause on the carbon tax. They would probably gain 5 or 6 points in the polls right away if they just had the humility to basically state that, yes, this is not the time for the carbon tax. It's never the time for the carbon tax. It's a terrible policy, and they know that the carbon tax doesn't even do anything for emissions if emissions reductions would actually, fix the climate. But if the Liberals just said 3-year pause, they would immediately gain support back. That is why the Newfoundland MP Ken McDonald voted to get rid of the carbon tax. Because like a lot of politicians in the US do, sometimes you have to vote against your own party to try and gird yourself up in your riding. And when Liberal Party MPs, a party notorious for having no independent thought in it, is having their MP starting to split from the Prime Minister, that is a telling thing, that he's willing the risk of getting kicked out of caucus just to try and gain a little bit more support back in his own riding so that people slap him on the back and say, hey, thanks for doing that, Ken. You did the right thing. Here's another poll result that's a lot of fun to look at. So Pierre Poilievre, who supposedly, from listening to the mainstream media, is a deeply unpopular figure in Canadian politics, well, he is 37% preferred as the next Prime Minister of Canada. Trudeau is actually underperforming his own national polling numbers, so the Liberals were at 23 nationally, and he only has 19% of people preferring him as the Prime Minister. Seeing at 17, Blanchet at 4. Obviously, a bunch of Bloc people are just going to say Blanchet, and some other ones will pick Poilievre or Trudeau because they know a Bloc leader is never going to be the Prime Minister. And then you have May and Bernier. Poilievre is actually very personally likable in the national Canadian consciousness. Trudeau in a funny way, even though he is an older guy than Poilievre, he always tried to come off as very much a young prime minister. These days, he comes off as very old and stale, which is funny because that is like the antithesis of the brand that he's tried to build. So he is like an old, stale politician who's still trying to be the hyper progressive. So if anything, it just seems like he's never grown into being a statesman. It feels like he's still some substitute teacher activist that's never really grown into the office. But this is great to see. The Conservatives at 20% above the Liberals. That, when I last saw the projections for seats, would put the Conservatives at 236 seats, and the Liberals only about 44 seats. That is insane. I don't think there's ever been a worse result for an incumbent party since Kim Campbell. And I don't even really count that one because the PC party effectively split into three parties, the PCs, Reform, and the Bloc Québécois. So does not count in my mind. This might be the worst falling down of an incumbent government in Canadian history if we ignore Campbell. Justin Trudeau, again, it's all a personality and arrogance problem. The funny thing is it's actually kind of easy to win elections as a Liberal politician. You can make Eastern Canada happy, keep their benefits stable, grow them over time, raise taxes a little bit on the top 1% to get your progressive base liking you, and then just throw a lot of sort of small micro kind of benefits to families and whatnot, and hire a bunch of government workers who are like beholden to voting for you after that. Very easy. The Liberals, though, have started trying to edge into the NDP's territory more and more. Every time they've lost voters due to corruption scandals, they're thinking, okay, well, we can maybe recover some of our votes by shifting left and grabbing up some of the progressive NDP voters. The problem with that is, as incompetent and silly as the NDP is effectively a political cult whose members will never vote for the Liberals, or unless they have a chance, like the NDP has no chance in their riding, they'll vote Liberal to stop the Conservatives. Even that in practice really doesn't happen that much. But the Liberals, in moving left to try and take NDP votes to recover their support, have actually just been alienating more and more sort of middle-of-the-road, middle-class voters who just wanted stability in the government. And as much as the Liberals are fear-mongering about Poilievre, both in the media and in like press conferences from like their own politicians and ministers, saying that Poilievre is going to be a dangerous radical figure because he might cut government spending. Guys, government spending went up 66% since 2015. Don't threaten Canadians with a good time. I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. Shameless plug. If you live in this West Calgary federal riding, buy a membership, vote for me. My website's in the description below, WyattClaypool.com. But the thing is that I've not talked to a single person on the phone. Former Liberal voters, former NDP voters. I've not talked to someone at the door. Any party that they used to vote for. Nobody is actually scared of cuts. Everyone knows that there needs to be cuts made. And so saying that they might cut vital social services, nobody believes that. Everyone knows that all the cuts are going to happen in administration and HR and get reinvested either in real things that Canadians actually need, like more services at passport offices, or it's just going to be given back to taxpayers. Nobody thinks that government spending is a requirement for people to live their lives. People know that actually government spending happens to be the problem these days. But again, the Liberals have doubled down on the idea that they just need to drive out their progressive base more and try and steal progressive votes from the NDP. So they've just been shoveling more of their kind of blue Liberal votes back over to the Conservatives, not realizing that's not even, I like Poilievre. I think he's a very good politician. He motivates me to vote for him in a way that Erin O'Toole did not motivate me to vote for the Conservatives. But I'd say in a national picture of this whole thing, I don't even think that Pierre's winning himself as many more votes as much as Justin Trudeau's just giving it to Poilievre, because Trudeau doesn't even know what Canadians want anymore. So every time he says something, it scares people over to the Conservatives, who are not as scary as the Liberals want to make them out to be. Anyways, that should be it for me today. This poll was a lot of fun to cover. I like seeing good poll results like this. I don't know, makes me happy, and I like talking about polling. But again, if you live in Calgary Signal Hill, buy a Conservative membership, vote for me, check out my website, WyattClaypool.com. If you live in Calgary, every time I release a video, there's like 3,000 people watching from Calgary. I guarantee a bunch of you live in the riding, or you know somebody who lives in the riding. So help me win this thing so we don't end up getting a politician who takes photos with Jody Gondek representing this area, who doesn't even live in it. That is Jeremy Nixon, by the way, who's the guy I'm competing against. And then other than that, you can donate to the Give Send Go National Telegraph uh, legal fund that's linked in the description below. We're being sued by a ridiculous billionaire developer who's suing us for defamation that he cannot prove. We did not defame him at all. And even all of our reporting on him pretty much just references a long Globe and Mail article that had already been written about him a year and a half ago. But he expected that I couldn't pay for the lawsuit because I was a 22-year-old. I think I was only 21 when the lawsuit started. So he assumed he could like pressure me into giving him fake apologies so that he can pretend every bad thing ever said about him is false when it's all true. And so he ended up just getting into this long, drawn-out legal fight, and it's costed me more than $26,000. But I refuse to apologize for people for dumb garbage. So we're going to fight this out to the end and hopefully get all of our money back. Anyways, that should be it for me today. Finally, sorry for the rambling. I'll see you guys all next time.